the Minister of the Arts, the Culture Minister here, it's Hans Zehetmeier, came to me and asked me if I would take over the Bayerische Staatsoper in München. So I said no. And then they sent August Everding to see me, to persuade me, and I also said no, and blah, 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 blah. And then it was August Everding who said something very interesting. He said, you know, you have to be polite to the Bavarians because they're mountain people, Bergvolk. And so he said, you know, at least go and see them. So I was traveling somewhere and I came back via Munich and I went to see Hans Zehetmeier. And I had a kind of blackout in the meeting. And I didn't, you know, because I think he gave me a glass of Frankenwine, which I don't really like, but I drowned it and I hadn't had anything to eat. And he said, ask me again. I said, okay, I'll do it. Give me to the end of the month to decide. And then I did it. And then he started to talk about who should be music director. And I had talked to Daniel in the meantime and got his advice, Barenboim, because Daniel was already in Berlin. And he said, why don't you ask Zubin? You and he will get on so well. So I asked Zubin whether he would talk to the minister, because it wasn't my job to give. It's a ministerial appointment. And Zubin said, no, I don't want to be music director of an opera house. No way. But I will come and do one of your first productions. And that was to be Tannhäuser with David Auden in my first festival. That's 93, 94, so Festspiele 94. And he promised to do it. He wrote it in his calendar and he promised to do it. And he said, but I will not be music director. I will come in regularly, but I will not be music director, but I will do your opening festival production. And the Tannhäuser was a very nice, controversial, excellent production that is still in the repertory here. And so our contact was very close, and he got on very well with the orchestra. And then after 3 years of this, which then became 5, the Bavarian cabinet said, you know, we really need a music director. So I said, yes, well, there's only one thing to do, is to ask Zubin again, you know. So I remember asking them if I could really have a carte blanche to talk to him on behalf of the minister. And they said yes. And they sent me to talk to him. At that point, the Munich Philharmonic were on the verge of giving Zubin a contract to be music director of the Münchner Philharmoniker. And I called the minister, and Zubin was at that time conducting The Ring in Chicago, for Chicago Opera. And das war sehr gut in Bayern, also kein Bürokratie. Minister Zehetmeier said to me, get on a plane to Chicago, book yourself into a hotel. You know Chicago, you lived there for 11 years. Get there, sit in his hotel, and convince him, as long as it takes, to come. So I took the plane 2 days later to Chicago. I rang Zubin up and said, look, I'm coming to one of your Ring performances. I'm staying in your hotel, let's have dinner. And one night we had dinner and we talked through the night. And the next morning I could call the minister saying, you have your music director. And that was the beginning of the story of Zubin and Munich at the opera. And I remember, I think it was the Abendzeitung had on its headline, Zehetmeier klaut Uder's Stardirigent. That's how I met Zubin, that's how our relationship flourished. But on a personal level, I really love Zubin. I mean, he's a wonderful man, and I've worked with all these giants, you know. And some of them are talented, and some of them are more talented, and some of them are less talented. Some of them have charisma, some of them have less charisma. Some of them are geniuses, some of them are ordinary people with exceptional talent. But there is only one who is a completely honest, open human being of tremendous generosity of spirit, and that's Zubin Mehta. He is a real mensch. And when you have Zubin Mehta as a collaborator, in an opera house. He is as simple and as genuine and as hard-working as every single member of that company. He is not a conductor who comes in and does his rehearsal and then goes back to the hotel or the apartment to rest and comes back for a performance. No. Zubin comes in at 8:30 or 9 in the morning, sits in his office, wants to listen to all the gossip, all the tratsch. He wants to know who's sleeping with whom, who's doing what to whom, what's happening under the stairs, what's happening behind the scenery, and he just loves it. And he gets on with everybody, whether it's the cleaners, the wig maker, the stagehand, the orchestra, chorus, everybody knows everybody's name, and that's what people don't realize about him. The only people who don't understand Zubin Mehta are critics, because they think he's much too gifted, he's much too naturally talented, he doesn't have to work at it, they think, he just has it naturally, and he's not an intellectual. Well, I must tell you, they're wrong, because Zubin is a very, very clever man. But he's so clever that he doesn't have to wear his intellectual perspicacity on his shoulder. He doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need to proclaim that he's well read or that he can write well. He only deals in the music, what happens behind the scene and how hard he works and how hard he has to revise and study. He doesn't show. And he doesn't be over-serious about things. He's brought up in Bombay in an English school where it was verpönt. It was looked down upon to look too professional. I was brought up the same way. So, you're always supposed to never show that you're working. You only work at nights or behind the scenes. And that's sometimes misinterpreted. So when they give an interview with Zubin Mehta and they want to hear about what does he think about the harmonic structure of a piece, and he won't go there. He's not somebody who sits there like a Zen guru and appears to have a very intellectual point of view. No. He just says, look, it's the music. And he's right. He has a kind of innere Ruhe. He has an inner peace. It's made up of two components. First of all, his generosity and his generosity of spirit, which means that he has many colleagues, singers, conductors, some of whom are nice and some of whom are not so nice, and some of whom are really unkind to other people. And I've seen situations when Zubin has been insulted by somebody. And Zubin will never reply. He will never talk back. He will never punch back. He will simply accept it, and you will find that in the same day or the next day, he will offer something nice to that person who insulted him. And it's the same with colleagues and singers. And so that is one side of his inner peace. He's at peace with himself. So he accepts negative vibes from people and doesn't give them back. But the other side of this inner peace means that he has something which he did a lot of yoga as a young man. He has a very flexible Indian body. So he doesn't like to sit at a desk. He doesn't really like to sit in a chair. He prefers to sit in a yoga position, in the lotus position on a sofa. If you sit him on a sofa in his own office, he'll sit on the sofa with his legs like this, or on the floor or whatever. And he takes things in a peaceful way. He accepts them and he digests them. He doesn't forget them. And he may even be upset about them. But he doesn't immediately punch back. And in music, this translates into having an ease of breath and breathing. This ease of breath and breathing, this tranquility. So that if you go to look at a rehearsal with the Staatsorchester, who he loves, by the way. Interestingly, Carlos Kleiber and Zubin, they both love the Bayerische Staatsorchester because that is an orchestra that has a personality. And you see him at the beginning of a rehearsal and he'll sit at the podium waiting for everybody to come in. He doesn't have to say, okay, shh, we'll start. Doesn't have to happen. Zubin sits there, waits for it to be 10 o'clock, everybody's talking, and everybody will of themselves suddenly at 30 seconds past 10 will be quiet. He doesn't do anything. And he says, schön hier zu sein. And he starts. The one thing that will annoy Zubin Mehta, the one thing that will upset him, is if he picks up a newspaper or an article about him that says Stardirigent in German. Horrible German Unwort, non-word. It's the word Stardirigent. Now there are many conductors who love to read their name over the rubric Stardirigent. Zubin hates it because he's not like that. He's just a wonderful, ordinary, very civilized guy. So when something goes wrong, you know, Zubin's conducting with his wonderful fluid movements, something goes wrong. Somebody makes a mistake, yeah? What happens in a rehearsal is this, oh, I'm sorry, it's my fault. Even during a performance, something doesn't quite work, he goes, oh. It's not this type of conducting where something goes wrong and the conductor stares, you know. No. Sometimes I would do some experiments with Zubin, sort of little experiments. I would watch him, you know, we had offices. My office was on one side, then there was an office in the middle where my assistant and my secretary sat and his secretary, and then on the other side was his office. So we were all in kind of one suite, and we would all live out of each other's offices. And at lunchtime, he would get on the phone to his favorite Italian restaurant and order, because everybody always thinks I don't eat enough. They always think he's been unterernährt. Yeah? So he would always order food to be brought in from his favorite Italian restaurant. We would all sit and eat together mozzarella. And then he would sometimes go into his office if he had a little free time, and he would be flicking over scores. He would have the television on. He installed a Sky satellite, so he could receive Sky Sports cricket all the time. So the cricket would be on the television, and he would be there with the score. Now, when we did Moses and Aaron, that was actually our last new production, Moses and Aaron. And, you know, this is a complicated score. The Moses and Aaron was a very good production, and we always wanted to do it as a farewell. And he would be sort of revising it. So I said to Zubin, what are you doing? He said, I'm revising, like a schoolboy, I'm revising. And he would be flicking through. And I would always find it remarkable how he could look at the cricket, listen to the cricket, and read the score of Moses and Aaron's on annotated. I said, how do you do it? So then one day I tried an experiment, and he reads a lot, Zubin, books even. But I tried an experiment. I put a book in front of him, rather difficult. And I said, now read this, and I want to see how long it takes you to read this page. And he read the page, and it took an average length of time. Then I put a completely fremd partitur in front of him, of a piece that I knew he didn't know. I said, now read these 2 pages and tell me how long it takes. And he looked at it and said, oh yeah, I see. So he had developed over the years a method of reading notes faster than words. It's a very famous cricket team called the MCC, the Marylebone Cricket Club. I hadn't played for the Marylebone Cricket Club, but it's very funny that there is cricket played in Munich, and the title of the Munich Cricket Club is also MCC. So that sounds legendary, you know. And I used to play for the Munich Cricket Club here in Munich when I was international, until I got too old to play. And we used to invite Zubin to come along and play too, and he could still bowl like Indians bowl, always spin the ball from the back of his hand. And we had a great deal of fun. Zubin has an element of Pasha-like luxurious aura, but that's his upbringing. He's from Bombay, for God's sake. Yeah? That means generosity. Go to dinner with Zubin, he will order as much food until you can't eat anymore, and there has to be completely a full table, still the food, when you're finished. That's a Bombay tradition. And I understand it, I love it. So that's the story.